So interest rates, you talked about it a lot. And the Fed is raising some interest rate. So what's going to be the impact of that on financial services and financial products?
Financial services and products is going to increase all your it's always been doing that. They've been doing that since like last year in 2022,
Right.
where our inflation has been going up. The reason our inflation has been going up because we have too many dollars chasing too few goods. That's the simplest definition of what inflation is. That means all of us, like, there's maybe, let's say for example, just an example, spitball here.
Mhm.
There's 5 TVs that exist in a town where like 100 people want it. Because 100 people want those 5 TVs, then the price of those 5 TVs go up.
Mhm.
That's how that works. So when there's a lot of people going after too few goods, then the price of those goods go up. And that's what we're seeing in regards to the economy ever since late 2021. Why? Because we had the whole pandemic happen. We had a lot of stimulus money comes in. People were flush with cash. They wanted to spend it on items, and the items were running out. There were times where we couldn't even get iPhones because, oh, why? Because there's a supply chain issue. It's not around. So what happens on the black market or the natural market of people? Whoever has the iPhone or the PS5 or whatever it is, the price of that product goes up.
Mhm.
So that's what happened with inflation. So when inflation came in, the Federal Reserve, which is not the federal government, there's two different entities. They sound the same, but they're
Yeah.
not. The
Okay.
Federal Reserve comes in, and the thing that they can do is raise interest rate or pump more money into the market. It's a weird thing, but ultimately they could raise interest rate or lower it.
Mhm.
So by raising interest rate, the goal is to kind of convince people to stop spending. But the problem is people say, you know what? I just want to spend. Like, I don't care. It's like, I don't, what we're finding in the late 2021 is that people started taking money away from their savings
Mhm.
in order for them to spend. And into 2022, when they ran out of savings, what they end up doing is actually putting more money on credit cards in order to spend.
Mhm.
So it's a vicious, it's a really bad cycle for a lot of
Wow.
people because
Wow.
they're it's basically the generational poverty cycle. Like
Mhm.
you can't do both at the same time. It's the worst thing you can do. So they're basically taking from their savings. So all they could do is just spend, 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 and continue spending. And if when they run out of money, they spend more on credit. So the Fed is like, okay, we're gonna raise rates to dissuade you from spending, but people are like, I still want to spend. This is what it is. So we're in a situation like we're playing chicken here,
Mhm.
where every month or so we're trying to figure out where inflation is, so
Mhm.
we could either raise or hold, because he's not going to decrease it, he's just going to hold it. And what's going to happen is that everything's going to be expensive for a while, so it could slow down people spending and also slow down prices. Housing prices supposed to kind of taper off. Other prices on eggs, margarine, butter, bread, all that stuff starts tapering off because now there's people feel a little bit pinched for money and they want to stay home a little bit longer. So that is the goal with the Federal Reserve. They really want to try to help people, but we kind of have to help ourselves on this one, guys. Like, you need to stop spending.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So yeah. So emergency fund, you know, is that people say you need to have at least 4 to 6 months of emergency fund?
Yeah, people say a lot of those things. It's a lot of money. I've seen a lot of people so scared, especially in 2020. I saw a couple, which is they're like a financial couple or something, but they had over $100,000 in their savings. Why? Because they're so afraid of reality because
Mhm.
they've heard from so many other people they need to have a year, 5 years, 10 years, that they were carrying $100,000 where they could have actually made that money grow in their investment, their retirement, and in other things to an absurd amount. That $100,000 could have at least been a good 300,000 if they just invested it. And literally just if they just invested it instead of actually keep holding on to it. So for me, I'm a lot more flexible, like I said before, with the emergency savings. I say that the average household to very start off with should keep around $2,500 per adult person in emergency reserve for savings. Why? Because anything can happen. Somebody could break a leg. Somebody could, run out of this, yada, yada. It's just good to have $2,500 for a stability standpoint. And I think that works. That's something that it's a small parameter. It's something that's easy to achieve. easy to you set your mind to and just put some money to it every time. You don't have to do it tomorrow. Doesn't have to be in a year, but it needs to be something that you work on in order for you to be financially stable. So for a family of two adults, that'd be $5,000. However, if you have kids, I double that and say, hey, for every kid, you need $5,000. So if you have one child, you got two parents and one child, that's $10,000. You got an extra child, that's 15. You got a third child, that's $20,000 in reserve, because anything can happen. A person could lose their job, yada yada. A house, a leak could happen in the home. An AC could need a repair. Having a $20,000 is a precaution for you. I think having more than 6 months. 6 months for an average family is what? Well, 1 month for an average family is about $5,000. 6 months would be $30,000 sitting around on the side. Yeah, it's novel to have, but I think it's very difficult for the average family to even fathom or even get to that point. Right. So start where you can. You don't have to be like everybody else. Start with like that 2,500. I think that's good for an emergency for one person. Double that for another person, and then add an additional, almost like, quadruple that for a kid. So it ends up being 10 grand for a family of three. So ultimately, I think that's good. And from that point, if you are an entrepreneur or want to shift towards entrepreneurship, then I think that's when they say, hey, take around like a year or two in emergency savings, because you don't know if it's going to be profitable or not. That's what you do. You build and you have an emergency savings plan, not just emergency savings, because whenever something happens, like, it's not going to be your bank savings account that's going to help you. It's likely going to, when you go to the doctor, they look at you, where's your card? They don't say, hey, write me a check. And say, where's you're going to pull out your card as soon as possible. So when you get that, if you have a plan, the plan should also include you having a credit card that has enough available balance to sustain you as well. So in order for you to actually pay for it in the moment and then pay it off when you get home with your savings account, so on and so forth. And on top of that, I'll say to anybody that's listening, if you have a savings account, make sure that you replenish it, because at some point you're going to use it. I get it, but you got to replenish it. You got to go back to, to ground zero to make sure that it comes right back up again, so you could be secure all over again.
Wow. So you talked about dollar cost averaging, as a way to invest. So what it is, if you want to expand a little bit on that, what is dollar cost averaging?
Wow, man. Yeah, I hear every word that I'm chopping here. Okay. Dollar cost averaging is, in simplest terms, it's like you're just steadily buying into the market, no matter if it goes up or it goes down. Right. Especially with the way that we talked about before, when we're thinking about the buying an ETF that's pegged to the index. That's a fairly safe way to actually get into investing. Right. But you're also buying no matter what the interval of the market is. When you stretch out the market, because you can see a chart of its performance. It's like a mountain going to the right and up. That's how it looks like the entire time. Yeah, if you shorten it down, you start seeing some downfalls. But the analogy that I remember is kind of like walking up a hill with a yo-yo. Yeah, the yo-yo goes up and down, but you're walking up the hill. So at some point at the top of the hill, you still be further up wherever your yo-yo is, no matter if it's in your hand, lower to the ground, whatever it is. So that's the idea of the market. You buying in at any given interval, no matter if it's down, no matter if it's up, and you'll be able to do that consistently for whatever interval that you want. For example, the way I shared with other people to get into investing, I say at the end of every year, decide how much you want to invest the next year, right? Let's say if it's $12,000, and just say that's, well, let's just cut it down to $6,000. Mm-hmm. Let's just say, I don't have a lot of money, but this year coming up in 2024, I want to invest $6,000. You think $6,000 divided by 12, that is that's monthly. That's $500 monthly. So you pick a day, I don't care if every second Tuesday or whatever it is, and that day you deposit money and you also invest every time. And that's the way you do it. That's dollar cost average. You just consistently invest no matter what's going on. Tune your head out. Just keep going.
Wow. That's good, actually. That's a great system. So
yeah, it's just a simple thing.
For someone out there who wants to, be like Lawrence. Lawrence is very well versed in finance. He want to be someone who want to learn, become a financial literate. So what are the steps and what are some of the resources? Where are the best places they can go to learn about it?
Hey, you're coming in with all the hardest questions known to man. If in order for you to become financial literate, it's going to take time. The same amount of time that it took us to get into financial trouble, it will take that much time and even longer to become a little bit more literate and also more proficient. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
It's not a path for everybody, but it's a path if you want it. If you want to accept that road, you could kind of go down that road, and you find that the more and more that you do what you need, it'll always open up to all the windows to doing what you want. But if you do it in reverse, like you do what you want and try to do what you need, you end up always broke in that scenario. So with that being said, I think the first couple of things you could do is actually having a financial plan. I do offer, and offer mean like for free, a financial plan that's available on my website. There are other people that are, I think there's a lot of other financial plans that exist. You can find it online at any given time. You can even follow Dave Ramsey. There's a big person that provides financial plans. Okay. You got the Money Guy show that they provide financial plans as well. So there are ways to do it, but I think that's the first start. You have to have a plan. If you do not have the plan, you cannot really work the plan. You can't go anywhere. Another thing that I did at the very beginning is listen to different podcasts, and such as yourself or even YouTube channels, and try to glean into these people. I don't say to do a blind devotion of people. I'm saying listen with the person and kind of, okay, take notes of what worked for them and understand why it worked. So then you could say, you know what, maybe it's not going to be exact same path I'm going to take as Lawrence, but maybe I'm going to take a path that's a little bit tweaking here, a little bit tweaking there, so it can actually work for me. I think that's the difference. I didn't fall into, hey, I'm a Robert C. Kiyosaki guy because I read that one book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's weird. I'm like, seriously, that's the only book you read? Like, did you stop reading after that? Because there's other books. A book that I personally love, like I think is one of the A+ books in the world right now, is Atomic Habits. Masterpiece. Mm-hmm. You read that, it will change your mindset, and it will hopefully change your discipline, and ultimately change your life. I think that's one of the best books out there. Another book is called The Psychology of Money. Really good book about how we come to the point where we have our money habits, our structures are bad, the bad parts, the trauma that we carry along with money, or even how we kind of move away beyond that. I would say additionally, there are people on YouTube like Investing with Rose is one of the better people that teaches people how to like investing one-on-one. Instead of going to somebody, I'm a day trader, I'm gonna tell you which one is up, which one is down. Relax. I rather listen to the person that's like, hey man, you're still here with me. You still calm down. The people that's sweating and they have like that, they're so hyped to tell you something. It's not the kind of person I listen to. Maybe that might be somebody else's vibe, but that's just not the thing for me. I like a calm, relaxed approach. I like long term. I like the food to simmer, as they say, because that's gonna give you the better food. So these are the things that work for me. The Money Guy show, which I said a few times, was probably one of the few podcasts I think who stand the test of time, because they are very much, they're professional, they're CFPs, they're CPAs, they're CFAs, and I also believe another person is CIA. All these are actual certificates. So it's the accounting one, the financial planner one, the internal auditor one, the financial advisor one. They have all of them, and they're actually very down-to-earth people that shares the same amount of information, if not more, than I do.
Wow. I can't wait for your podcast too. You know, we can
Oh yeah. We also got the podcast, but some people walk in our podcast like, I thought you was gonna talk about money only. We talk about our stories. Because I'm from like I said before at the very beginning, I grew up in Haiti. We grew up around like, the lights will kind of cut off majority of the time. There's rolling electricity there, so we basically sit around. It wasn't a campfire like you see on TV in the American version of it. It's just like, it's in Creole we call it laku, and it's hard to say in what is it, like, I would say it's like the courtyard. Yeah, that's what they call it. It's the courtyard. The family, friends, whatever, would gather in the courtyard, and we'll just share stories. And that's how we used to learn, how we should learn about different things. So that's kind of the vibe you'll get from our podcast. Me and two co-hosts would just talk about relative issues that's going on, or even how these issues are affecting us on an interpersonal level. Or we even bring in other guests, and we just talk about like how to process money. Sometimes we get deep, sometimes we get really light about it, but the goal is to really have a human experience when it comes to money, instead of it being, hey, invest well, I could tell anybody can become a multimillionaire pretty quick. Invest in your 401k, IRA, HSA, save as much as $30,000 a year in taxable income, grow it around like 8%. You'll get there around 17 years, you'll be a millionaire. In about 20 years, you'll be a multimillionaire. So I could tell you all this stuff all the time, but in the end of the day, it doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't gel.
Yeah.
As much more. The goal is to really understand that it's not the money, it's the person that changes. It's our relationship with money that really deserves the attention that we want out of ourselves and out of our lives.
Wow. Why we don't teach this in high school? Why don't teach this in college? Like financial literacy.
Why don't they teach this in they taught all of this. And I always tell people, like, there's a lot of things they taught in school that majority of people didn't care to learn. Because even to this day, when somebody said, "Why do you teach personal finance in high school?" I'm like, "So who's the third president of the United States?" Blank. Like they taught this every year. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of stuff they taught that we just in the moment we just didn't care about. It wasn't as interesting. It wasn't cool. And then that postulate creates another like confusion narrative, right? Like the teachers don't know how to do personal finance. So how can they teach you how to do personal finance if they don't know how to do it themselves?
Yeah.
So there's like it's almost a full circle that society has to change and start valuing how we use money, how we process money, and information, learning, and understanding. So this kind of recording right now that's happening is very much something you could rewind, listen to, and allow yourself to sink in to this information, because that's how you're going to change. But if we have like, TikTok 5-second reels, how do you think somebody has an attention span to learn anything personal finance?
Yeah.
It's just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
We have to get to the point where we understand that you have to sit with the information, you have to understand it. And you also have to say, hey, at what point in your life, when I met people that are 40, 50, that's like, oh, they should have taught me this in high school. So what did you do for the last 30 years though?
What did you do after high school?
Like what happened exactly? It's like, so you tell me you didn't learn it in high school, but yet afterwards, like
that's true.
Give me a little bit more. So at some point I challenge people to really take ownership of where we personally lacked.
Yeah.
Where we dropped the ball, when we thought it wasn't cool, it wasn't important. We just didn't care. We pressed the button every time. Every time we saw the app, it says Uber Eats extra charge. We're like, extra charge for me. Like
just buy. Amazon.com, Uber.
Yeah, it's like even if they taught you personal finance, you wouldn't know it. And they did, because personal finance is our financial literacy is a combination of a couple of different fields and disciplines, right? Either it be arithmetics, which is fairly much common in there, which we all learned or should have learned, which for some reason we have it in college again because people didn't learn it for some reason. Logic, critical thinking, creativity, even art could be part of personal finance. You start drawing out outlines in your head, writing, understanding, or government, because that's where it comes into taxes and so on, or civics, all of that stuff. Roll that stuff up into it, and that's what's personal finance. So these things are not like these separate disciplines that we separate them out to be. We're supposed to teach kids to use all disciplines to create knowledge or create new knowledge.